Appalachia is rife with all sorts of folklore, legends, and stories of the paranormal, cryptids, and unexplained experiences. There are ancient mountains called home by many tribes, and thankfully, those tribes can put a name to the smattering of odd things that happen in those primordial hills. If you were hiking while holding onto a trekking pole, took a spill, dropping it, and noticed that your bright red obvious walking stick had now vanished, and if you heard laughter around you in the woods, unable to determine where the sound is coming from, and if you then saw a small humanoid, then the Cherokee would tell you that you saw the Yunwi Tsunsdi, the Cherokee Little People. Hey y'all, and welcome back to Legends and Loggers. I'm Parker Wohlstein. I'm a forester and a wildlife biologist. I'm joined today by my co-host and brother.
Yep, Zac Wohlstein. I'm an outdoor television producer.
And today is a very special day because for the first time ever, we're having a guest on the show. Woo! Yeah.
Yeah.
Kevin has been a longtime friend of mine and is an avid listener to our podcast. Probably one of our top three biggest supporters.
Yeah, nice.
And one day I was chatting with him, and he mentioned that he had an experience kind of adjacent to today's topic. So I had him tell me nothing about it. Just having him on here.
He said, "Take the show, Kevin."
Yeah, I said, "You're coming on the show." And we'll be having him come on a little bit later after we get into some of the background and initial folklore and stuff. But wait, that's not it, because I'm a benevolent podcast host. I'll also be detailing one of the scariest things that's happened to me out in the woods of Appalachia that could possibly be attributed to little people. I don't know if it is. Could be, though. We'll see. But before we really get into things, Zach, what you drinking?
Today I've got something called white ale. And the reason I chose this is because one of the names often associated with this group is the
Moon-eyed people.
The Moon-eyed People. And look at the size of those. Look at the size of those eyes. It's like the size of moons.
So there's a lot of stuff where the Moon-eyed people are the same as the little people, but that's just people not like digging in and like really thinking about it. Because we'll talk about it here in a minute. Basically, there's a class of beings, and the little people and the Moon-eyed people are both in that class, but they're like different tribes.
Well, slightly related then.
Yeah,
big eyes.
Counts.
Look like moon.
Mine, I've got Flying Tiger Brewery made here in Louisiana, Monroe.
That's pretty cool.
And this is their Man-at-Arms Amber. Yeah.
Well, how about that?
Uh-huh. This one's called Man-at-Arms Amber. I got this because we're mainly going to be in North Carolina. First in Flight, Flying Tiger. Hey-o.
There you go.
And our guest star today, Kevin, is a big history nerd, so... little World War II action.
One other thing I wanted to mention about this one's a Japanese beer. It's a ale brewed with spices and juice.
Huh.
So, yeah.
Tell them to stop.
Koichi
Tell them wheat and water.
Brewery? Yeah, wheat and water, nothing.
All right.
Also, it's got a cute little owl on the top. I don't know if you can see that because of my light.
Every time, dude.
Yeah, just stop doing that, bro.
Stop doing what?
Spilling.
Stop opening them. I forgot it's Sober Thursday. Dadgummit. Maybe we'll get it next time.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Good solid beer. It's one you could drink multiple of without getting sick of it. It's just normal enough.
Fantastic.
Oh.
This might be like in my top 3 ones we've ever had on the show.
Jeez.
Oh, I love that.
Beating out Andy Gator?
I think it might be an Andy Gator for me.
What? What about a Straw Gator?
I haven't tried Straw Gator.
No way.
This is really good. Wow. Okay, what is it? White ale. God, it says. I want you to try and pronounce this actually. Can you read that on the back?
No. Wait. Michinimo Nest Beer.
Oh, it's a H. So, Hitachino Nest Beer.
Oh.
But yeah. Well, fantastic. Highly recommend it. You can pick it up at Specs if you're in Texas.
Yeah, this is good. One of my coworkers kept on telling me to go to Flying Tiger, and I just haven't yet.
Wow. I will probably be buying this one again. Also, before I move
Wow.
on, one thing I just realized that, like, just now at this moment, I'm currently wearing like an olive green shirt. And there's a green screen behind me, and I'm hoping
Oh,
that's
that's
not
gonna be
gonna.
funny.
Yeah, I'm hoping that it's a different enough tone to where that's not gonna be an issue later. There's a solid chance you're gonna see some weird stuff happen. I'm not gonna go back and change shirts. We're already here, so
Just have fun with it at this point.
yeah, there's a solid chance I'm gonna be a floating head in this edit.
I've seen YouTube guitarists, like especially ones that make mainly joke content. They'll get a solid like green screen color guitar. So like as they're playing like a
Looks
cover,
like there's
it'll
just
just
nothing
like
there.
show memes on the guitar.
That's great. Why?
Oh yeah. Oh, another disclaimer. Today is the first day in 6 days that I haven't had a fever because of COVID. So, and I did all this research while having pretty deep in a COVID fog. So we're going to see how this goes. We're going to see how my voice and my sinuses hold up. But it should be good time. Good time. All right. So the Cherokee Little People, or Yunwi Tsunsdi, are a subdivision of what the Cherokee call the Immortals, which the Cherokee word is Nanunhi. I don't know. Or the people who live anywhere. They're a race of small humanoids, only about a foot to 2.5 feet tall, generally handsome and hardy with long hair that live in rock caves in the mountains. They're generally benevolent, but most people categorize them as being a type of fae, such as fairies or leprechauns
What?
in Irish lore. Yeah, that's kind of how Kevin and I got onto this because he's like, I have an experience with the fae, and I was like, where was it? And he was like,
You're
he
like,
told me,
oh,
I was
you
like, I
mean
don't
the
know.
Fray Christian rock band? I mean, yeah, I've had a few experiences with the Fray.
Give me strength. So with them being fae, it means that they kind of have a different morality than humans do.
What?
You know, they're not like necessarily evil, but they're not really great either.
Chaotic?
You know, like yeah, like if you look at it from like Irish culture or pagan culture, they're kind of just like
More like
they
Fagin culture.
they exist. Yikes. they they exist. They're not like trying to actively hurt people, but like they'll do some things because like that's okay for them, but it's not really okay in human terms.
Yeah, that's so fake.
If you're thinking from a Christian perspective, probably demons
What?
or like less or
Really?
like lesser spirits. Yeah, they're not good. Like they're not like
But I don't know if I would go as far as demons are like actively bad, you know, for the
yeah.
most part. So I don't
For the
know.
most
Seems
part.
like a bit of a stretch to be like they are not good,
Yeah.
so they're demons like that.
Well, you either work
Maybe
for
more
God.
like maybe more like a djinn, you know.
Yeah, but I mean, if you look at the literature, if you're not actively for God, then you're technically actively against. Yeah.
I have the
Anyway,
same
but
mentality when it comes to friendship.
yeah, they might just be like some kind of lesser spirit thing, entity, whatever they are. Yeah, they're not really like they're not going out and killing people and terrorizing them for the most part, but they're not like actively doing all this good either. Kind of just left to their own. So they generally love to play tricks on people, and they kind of have their own rules that they play by, with humans often not knowing what the rules are. According to some sources, such as Cindy Thornton Haggerty, there are 3 clans of little people. There's the Dogwood clan, which are kind, and they help lost folks and children, even harvesting some people's crops for them if they fall ill or have some other thing that they need to tend to. They'll wake up and all their crops need to be harvested or just in nice, neat stacks right by their little house.
Wow.
And then there's the Laurel clan, which are the main pranksters and tricksters. And then finally, there's the Rock clan, which are often mean-spirited and should be avoided.
I imagine those ones they wear like what is it? Those vests that are like made out of jean material, you know, denim vests that have the patches and stuff on it.
Yeah, it's called Battle Vest.
The battle vest, yes, they all wearing battle
Yeah.
vests.
That or just like your 1950s rockabilly kind of deal.
Yeah, exactly. All of them are wearing bandanas and whatnot. Easily the coolest tribe.
By the way, I quote Cindy as a source for these three clans. Cindy is just somebody that has native ancestry, not like a historian or storyteller or anything of the sorts. It's just like in like two articles they reference Cindy, who has some relation to the Cherokee. Okay. Cindy. But like most people ran with it, so there we are.
I want to do that for like somebody asked some question, I don't know, about like American folklore and whatnot. I was like, oh yeah, I've heard of that. Okay, so I think that this happened and then that happened. They're like, all right, mark it as a source.
Yeah. That's kind of weird that can happen with a lot of these Native American stories.
Because like no one else knows. Like people don't know.
Yeah, they're like,
about it.
oh,
so if somebody even knows.
I'm one.
Yeah, if someone even knows just like the smallest bit, that makes them the most qualified person.
Yeah, like I'm 1/28th Cherokee. I can tell you this. It's being like, if your whole family, moved from Ireland, then went to Kentucky, and then went over to California and like spread all over the Northwest, of the United States. And someone's like, hey, can you tell me about this town in Ohio? And they're like, my family used to live near Ohio.
Yeah.
Three,
I could tell you
4
anything.
generations back.
Yeah.
Yeah, kind of weird, but it's not going to come up that much. And really, should you be like interacting with any of them? Or do you want to interact with any foot-tall humanoid?
No. Oh, yeah.
No. Jeez. All right. So let's delve a little bit deeper into who/what the little people are and the stories surrounding them. First, we're going to read from Myths of the Cherokee by James Mooney, who we love, and we love this book.
Oh, yeah. He was the guy from the Uktena.
Yeah, I relied pretty heavy on this book for the Uktena episode. It's a great book with a lot of really fun stuff in there. For those that didn't know, Mooney lived with the Cherokee tribe and wrote down this huge book of folklore and stories, which had only ever been oral tradition until this book. So, in reference to the little people, Mooney writes, they are great wonder workers and very fond of music, spending half their time drumming and dancing. They are helpful and kind-hearted, and often when people have been lost in the mountains, especially children who have strayed away from their parents, the little people have found them and taken care of them and brought them back to their homes. Sometimes their drum is heard in lonely places in the mountains, but it's not safe to follow it because the little people do not like to be disturbed at home. They throw a spell over the stranger so that he is bewildered and loses his way. Even if he does at last get back to the settlement, he is like one dazed ever after. Sometimes they also come near a house at night and the people inside hear them talking, but they must not go out, and in the morning they find corn gathered or the field cleared as a whole force of men had been at work. If anyone should go out to watch, he would die. When a hunter finds anything in the woods, such as a knife or a trinket, he must say, little people, I want to take this, because it may belong to them. And if he does not ask for their permission, they will throw stones at him as he goes home. And interestingly enough, there's an Appalachian storyteller named Tim Hall that he recounted where he was walking a stream one time and he found a penny from 1842, and it was only weathered on one side and was like really shiny on the other. And he found it like weather side up. And he said that he held it up and he said, if this is for me, I will come back for it tomorrow. And he put it back down, weather side up, came back to the stream tomorrow, the next day, and the penny was flipped onto the shiny side.
Oh.
So he took it. Apparently still has it to this day.
And didn't get stoned on the way home.
Yeah, shockingly.
Yeah. I like the idea of like it's almost more like bullying. Like it's not even like they're trying to like actually kill him or anything. It's just more like, if they don't ask permission, they will throw stones at him as he goes home. Like, you jerk! Stop taking my stuff. That was my knife. Yeah. They're just
they're
throwing
little
rocks at him the whole way home.
What's kind of weird about
he's
that?
He's like, all right, goodbye.
I've heard that before with like other legends surrounding Appalachia. They're like, oh, if you're going to like woods you don't know, like one, you should leave a gift of tobacco for the Native American spirits. Which one, little racist. Come on, not every native smokes.
Yeah,
come on now.
Peyote.
Yeah, but second, it's like, all right, if if the little people own this knife, take it back to your village. Why is it in the creek?
Yeah, why are you leaving it there?
You know, like if you're gonna be so possessive, be a better owner.
Yeah.
You know?
Also, I like the idea, like the asking permission in particular. It's like, hey, I'm gonna take this knife, or like you're announcing it, right? That's what you're doing.
Yeah.
So I like the idea, like I'm assuming that they never say no, but like somebody's like, they
No,
find
you're
that
supposed
knife.
to you're supposed to come back the next day and if it's still there, you
Oh,
can have
okay.
it.
Oh, that makes sense. Okay.
But yeah, what a weird game. Like instead of just taking their things and putting them where their things should be,
Yeah.
they're like, I'm gonna leave this here until somebody asks if they can have it, and I'm gonna get mad, and if I don't want them to have it, I'll move it.
Yeah.
You know?
I like the idea, like it's just like 20 feet in a different direction. It's not
Yeah.
where it was, but still just randomly out there somewhere.
It's almost like a toddler way of thinking, you know?
Yeah.
Pretty
Almost
weird.
like a little person's way of thinking.
Wow.
Yeah, I'm gonna
Here's
cut
on
that.
it today.
Oh no,
Yeah.
I don't want to cut that. I can't keep that.
Like a dwarf among midgets.
Like a dwarf among men. I use that saying all the time.
Somebody wrote a quote on the whiteboard at Raven Run one time. It was like Parker's quote of the day. And I said, a dwarf is taller than midgets, but that don't make him tall, do it? So then Mooney wrote about a bunch of pretty quick stories regarding the little people that we'll hop into. So the first one, he says, once a hunter in winter found tracks in the snow, like the tracks of little children. He wondered how they could have come there, and he followed them until they led him to a cave, which was full of little people, young and old, men, women, and children. They brought him in and were kind to him. He was with them for some time, but when he left, they warned him that he must not tell or he would die. He went back to the settlement, and his friends were all anxious to know where he had been. For a long time he refused to say, until at last he could not hold his tongue any longer, but told the story, and in a few days he died. Only a few years ago, 2 hunters from Raventown, going behind the high fall near the head of Oconaluftee on the East Cherokee Reservation, found there a cave with fresh footprints of the little people all over the floor.
What? When was this? Do you know?
So it's in the late 1800s when he wrote this book.
Honestly,
so
dude,
I'm
that'd be
guessing-
so freaky.
Yeah, so I'm guessing the guy that was hunting in winter was probably a decent time back, and that was like a relayed story. And then, but he said, 2 years ago, there was like actively people that went behind that waterfall and saw that.
Wow.
So that's pretty weird.
Yeah.
Pretty strange. Next little one. During the smallpox among the East Cherokee just after the war, one sick man wandered off, and his friends searched but could not find him. After several weeks, he came back and said that the little people had found him and taken him to one of their caves and tended to him until he was cured.
Oh, those things can be nice.
Which the whole taking them to their cave thing and like not letting them leave or not letting them tell people, I think there's also a lot of that in leprechaun lore.
I don't know anything about leprechaun lore now. Should we cover leprechauns? Is that?
Probably. My wife found this like really odd old movie from Ireland. It's probably from the 50s or 60s, but it like kind of goes through all this, weird Irish lore like banshees and leprechauns, and like there's this guy that's always getting drunk at the bar. He wanders off in the woods and like gets taken by these leprechauns, and they show him the whole kingdom and stuff, and he's super tall, and these leprechauns were like tiny.
Oh, wow.
They had these tiny little horses that they would ride.
For those of you listening, Parker's making a little gesture with his fingers, showing about them like 3 inches.
Yeah, probably more about like 6.
What?
They're like coming up to his ankle, a little bit above his ankle or something like that.
That's crazy.
They're really small, but yeah, they kind of took him, and they're like, all right, well, now that you're here, you have to stay. He's like, I don't want to stay. And they're like, well, why'd you come here then?
And then he effing kills them all because he's so much bigger.
he doesn't, which
Oh.
is dumb.
Which that's not what you do in that situation.
I think they leave him alone, and he just like walks out the front door.
Okay.
I can't remember. The movie
just
wasn't
leaves.
good. The movie was not good.
I'm
Okay.
curious to watch it though. It sounds silly.
All right, next little thing. About 25 years ago, a man called Blank was lost in the mountains on the head of Okonalufti. It was wintertime and very cold, and his friends thought that he must be dead. But after 16 days, he came back and said that the little people had found him and taken him to their cave, where he had been well treated and given plenty of everything to eat except bread. This was in large loaves, but when he took them in his hand to eat, they seemed to shrink into small cakes so light and crumbly that he might eat all day and would still not be satisfied. After he was well rested, they had brought him a part of the way home until they came to a small creek about knee deep, when they told him to wade across to reach the main trail on the other side. He waded across and turned to look back, but the little people were gone, and the creek was a deep river. When he reached home, his legs were frozen to the knees, and he only lived a few days.
What?
Pretty weird.
Yeah, I thought they were helping
Weird.
him.
Yeah, I wonder if
Or
he,
were they just like
what?
fattening him up? You know?
Well, it didn't come to collect. I wonder if he told anybody. It doesn't
Oh, yeah.
specify whether he did or not. But the
Well,
bread
I mean,
thing's
he had
pretty
to,
weird.
right? Otherwise, how would they be covering it?
Yeah, I guess so.
Either that, or somebody came across some guy whose like legs were frozen to the knees and freshly dead, and was like, little people got him. Obviously, took him to their cave, fed him for a few days. Said he couldn't have
Yeah.
any of the bread.
Yeah, gave him weird bread.
Gave him weird bread. Very
Weird
odd.
shrink bread.
Yeah.
It's like shrink wrap with bread.
Old timey detectives are trying their best.
Yeah. Yeah, but their criminal investigations weren't the best.
Yeah.
Yeah, that bread thing's weird.
Yeah, it is. I'm curious about that.
Because it seems like everything else is normal sized ish.
Maybe it was just like cornbread, and he was just like, they just didn't use enough egg or something, so it just wasn't staying together very well.
Yeah, maybe too crumbly cornbread.
Yeah.
Gotta have just the right mix.
Maybe it was a crumble cake.
Man, I want some cornbread now.
I can go for some cornbread.
Yikes. All right, next little thing. Once the Yunwi Tsunsdi had been very kind to the people of a certain settlement, helping them at night with their work and taking good care of any lost children, until something happened to offend them, and they made up their minds to leave the neighborhood. Those who were watching at the time saw a whole company of little people come down to the ford of the river and cross over and disappear into the mouth of a large cave on the other side. They were never heard of near that settlement again.
Huh.
So in this one, something the village did made them mad. They said, we're done.
Yeah, like,
We're
screw
out.
you guys, I'm going home.
Yeah, they're being really nice, helping people out, and then villagers did something. And they said, okay, we're gonna disappear,
Yeah.
and they just up and were gone.
Huh. And it doesn't say, until something happened to offend them. It doesn't say what it was.
Yeah,
Well, that's
I
peculiar.
don't know. It might have been their little Fey rules or something going on. All right, so next is a conversation that writer Gary Carden had with Johnson Catolster, who is a man of Cherokee descent who worked in and around the Great Smoky Mountains and worked at the Bureau of Indian Affairs as a community health representative. This is how their conversation went.
Can you do it like Michael J. Fox?
Are you telling me that you actually saw one of the Cherokee Little People?
That was pretty good.
Nobody knows that. They've always been there. Listen to me, Gary. I don't think they die either.
So anyways, Parker's now doing the voices for Rick and Morty now that Justin Roiland's out.
Basically. Okay. Are you telling me that you actually saw one of the Cherokee Little People? Johnson merely smiled. Okay, if you won't tell me about your personal encounter, just tell me about them. Where did the little people come from? Johnson says, nobody knows that. They've always been there, he said. I don't think they die either. You mean they're immortal? Johnson laughed. Well, no one has ever found a Yunwi Tsunsdi graveyard. Johnson frowned and then he said, I think they're becoming fewer, fading away. When I asked why, Johnson said, because the world is changing. Things like highways, planes, television, those things drive them deeper into remote places. Of course, the remote places are becoming fewer, too. I asked, what will finally become of them? Johnson shrugged. They'll just become something else. Fog or a pool of water, maybe a raven.
What?
which is really funny. That he's like, what will they become? He's like,
I don't know. Fog.
Dirt. Yeah, dirt, a rock, maybe a raven, whatever.
Perhaps a minnow. Oh my god.
yeah, who am I?
Yeah.
It's like I'm a community health representative.
And then like a cat walks by, it's like, maybe that's one.
Yeah, definitely. Gary says, how did they live? What did they do? Mostly they play, and my grandfather said that they don't need food or sleep. They just have a good time. Yeah, dude.
All right.
Cheers to that.
You guys have had a party.
When I was young, I would sometimes camp deep in the woods, and I often heard them laughing at night. Then they would spy on me. They play games. They love to play tricks on Cherokee hunters. The little people could imitate animals, and the hunters would go charging off after deer and turkeys that weren't there.
Rascals.
I don't know. The spying on you thing.
Spying on things freaky, but then I like.
We might get into later.
I like that it gets a little playful.
Yeah. I can remember when families visiting the park sometimes have children who would wander off into the woods. After days of searching, the parents would get desperate enough to follow the advice of a Cherokee, someone who would tell them to ask for the Yunwi Tsunsdi for help. They can always find lost children. Then Gary says, how do you ask them to help you? And Johnson says, just go into the woods and call them. They will hear. I have taken mothers into the woods and told them to ask for help. Sometimes it worked. Someone would find the children standing near the road where the little people had led them. Sometimes the children were never found. Why do you think that they failed to find some of them? Johnson shook his head. They never failed to find them. Sometimes they would lead them deeper into their own world where the children became like them. They're there now, happy and laughing, playing forever. Sounds sweet, but also really creepy.
Dude, I don't know if you can see it. I literally got chills from that line, dude. They brought them. They would lead them deeper into their own world where the children became like them. That's freaky, dude.
Yeah, they're there now, happy and laughing, playing forever.
That part sounds nice.
Oh, but I don't know. It sounds like a horror movie thing.
Yeah.
Johnson went on to spin tales of outrageous pranks, and I thought of the Irish wee folk, who also danced, sang, and sometimes kidnapped children. Then Johnson began to talk
wait
about...
Wait a second. One of those things is not like the others. They were, they were a joyful bunch. They would dance, sing, kidnap children.
Dude, that party at the frat house last night was sick. I mean, we were drinking,
the music
some
was
people were
bumping.
smoking. We committed 3 acts of murder and arson.
Those mothers never going to find their kids. It's great.
Nice. Then Johnson began to talk about a hidden lake deep in the Smokies where both animals and Cherokees went when old age or terrible diseases sapped their strength. Both animals and the old grandfathers could wade into the lake and be healed. Only the Yunwi Tsunsdi know where the lake is. So they got like the Fountain of Youth kind of deal.
Oh, yeah. So maybe that's why they're immortal and whatnot. They got some sort of lake.
Maybe. Weird. Yeah, I thought that was an interesting conversation because, like, the writer, cool. The writer isn't like solely a cryptid guy. Like he just writes for like what's going on in the Smokies, kind of like in that area in general.
Okay, yeah.
And he just happened to be friends with this guy that's, native descent and worked for the Bureau of Indian Affairs. And like, I think he was talking about how like they used to like just sit around in front of the office trading stories that their grandfathers would tell them about little people and other cryptids and stuff like that. And he was just recounting this conversation because I think Johnson like lost a leg like 2 weeks later because of diabetes after this conversation, then like died like a couple months later. So rest in peace, Johnson. Thank you for the story. Pour one out. Pour out your beer and your backer for old Johnson. So then on a webpage for Mount Oglethorpe in Georgia, they had some personal stories. Lula Owl, a Cherokee elder, told about growing up on the Qualla boundary of the east band of Cherokee Indians in Cherokee, North Carolina. She said that when she and her mother would go into the forest to gather chestnuts, berries, and greens, her mother would always caution her to watch for the little people, because the mean ones might do something bad to them. Ugh.
Yeah.
Lula said, I've never seen no little people, but she always minded her mother and kept a keen eye as she gathered in the forest. Fellow researcher Lamar Marshall was hiking some Cherokee trails in the forest one day using a handheld GPS, when all of a sudden he felt like he was tripped, and down he went into a small creek. When he got up, he searched diligently for his handheld GPS, and he never found it. He just said that the little people took it.
Maybe.
Yeah, very, very possibly.
Yeah.
I mean, stuff.
Also, sounds like you fell into a creek, and it's easy to lose stuff in water. Let me tell you that.
Yeah, stuff can disappear pretty good
Yeah.
in both the forest and
Let
in
me tell you,
creeks.
or in trees. Let me tell you, we used to have this little throwing knife target set up in our backyard. We once threw a ninja star into it, and it's not. It was like just like 4 feet deep of trees, maybe 6. It wasn't that long.
And I mean, the Ninja Star was like that
It's
big.
pretty big, and we never found it.
We used
Like, we
metal
knew
detector and
exactly
everything.
Yeah, we knew exactly where it went, and we never found it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Still have no clue.
To this day.
All right, so let's get on to the more fun part of the show. We're going to get Kevin on here.
Wow.
Hey, all you legends and Logarians out there. My name is Kevin, and I am the first guest speaker for the podcast. I'm very excited to be here, very happy to be here. We coincidentally, Zac will probably edit this in, but we coincidentally did a segment of all three of us together, and like an idiot, I forgot to press the record on the audio, so it's useless. But yeah, so I'm gonna do a little story bit off on my own about my encounter with the little people, or the fairies, the fae, as I was described to them at the time. It was fairies that I was dealing with, and I want to be upfront and say that I am a man of science. I do not believe these things exist, but I think it's fun to entertain the idea. And what I experienced is like, it gave me chills at the time. It made me very uneasy, and I don't have a very solid explanation for it. But yeah, I guess I should really introduce myself a bit more. So I've known the Wohlstein brothers for years. Parker and I go all the way back to middle school. And like Parker, I am a wildlife biologist. So I study reptiles and amphibians for the most part. Do a lot of active conservation work. And so because of that, I'm in the woods a lot. And that kind of segues into my story. So back in the summer of 2021, I had a summertime internship back when I was in school, working in the Great Smoky Mountains National Park. And we were doing salamander research there, because it's the salamander capital of the world. There's a lot of cool research ideas and stuff that could be done there. So I was working underneath this grad student, and because it's salamander work, salamanders are nocturnal, we would go out at night. I lived in Gatlinburg, right next to Dolly World, next to the home of Dolly Parton. So I joked that we worked a 9 to 5, but instead of working 9 a.m. to 5 p.m., we worked 9 p.m. to 5 a.m., and that was pretty accurate. And when I was working in the area, coincidentally, my undergraduate advisor from the University of Georgia, Go Dogs, was also in the area. And so I tried as much as possible to get out when I wasn't doing my job, to finding salamanders, to get out and help him find salamanders. And so one night when I joined them, he had some employees, some other field techs with him, and one was much younger than us, and they told me to ask her about fairies. And I was like, okay, it's kind of a interesting conversation topic. But nonetheless, I asked her, I was like, so they tell me you know a lot about fairies. And she said, yes, I do. I learned them from this TikTok, from this old man on TikTok, as I suppose young people, that's where they get their information these days. Who knows? But yeah, and she said, so I learned on TikTok that there's a bunch of fairies in the park in the Great Smoky Mountains, and that there are 3 types of fairies. There are good fairies, trickster fairies, and then there are your bad fairies or your evil fairies. And I was like, okay, well, that's interesting. Like, what differentiates the 3 groups from each other? And she went on to say that good fairies are good. Trickster fairies will lead you off into the woods. They will play tricks on you. But bad fairies, if they get you, it's done. They'll kill you. And I was like, okay, wow. So how do I avoid bad fairies then? Was my response to that. And she said, so fairies will leave offerings, and if you touch the offering, then you belong to the fairy. But if you ignore the offering, then you're totally fine. And so, of course, my follow-up question was, what does an offering look like? How do I know when to avoid one, when to not touch one? And she said, you'll know one when you see one. That was all her response was. And so, taking these words of wisdom, I had a full summer of nighttime fieldwork ahead of me. And I kept that in the back of my mind. I told the grad student I was working under at the time this very interesting conversation I had with her. And this grad student, he was a great guy. I would hate to speak ill of him. But he described himself as a little stitious, like from The Office. Not superstitious, but a little stitious. I think I might be a little stitious. I think he was very superstitious. There was times when he would definitely make a big deal about things that I thought were just coincidence. But so I told him this story, and on one of our very first nights of field work, we were out doing some salamander surveys in these burned areas. The national park got burned really bad back in 2016, and so we're looking at to see the effects of that fire on salamander populations. So we're in this really dense vegetation. There's a lot of thorns. It's really hot. It's just a very uncomfortable night. And within the first 2 hours of doing our work at this one site, we lose some equipment. We lose a temperature probe. And so it's a very miserable night. And we finish those sites and we're like, thank God. And he assures me that the next 2 sites, or the next site will be much better. It was not. It was far worse. And this site was about a mile walk out from where we parked our car. It was a very dense site, very dense pine, to the point where I could not see 2 feet in front of my face. I could barely see my feet often at times. And so it was even more miserable. It was taking a very long time to do this site. And we finally get finished with the site. We hop back up onto the trail. I actually got lost a little bit in these dense pines, which I don't want to brag, but is not something I typically do very often. But we get back to the trail, and he checks all of his equipment to make sure he doesn't lose anything. He's like, all right, I got my notepad, I got my GPS, I got my tape reel. All right, I have everything. Don't want to lose any more equipment on this already awful night. And we start walking back to the car, this, I don't know, 20-minute walk, 25-minute walk at a brisk pace. And we get almost like within sight of the car, and something catches my eye in the middle of the trail. It's this bright little shiny thing. And as we get closer to it, I look down and I'm like, oh, there's a penny face up in the middle of the trail, like a bright, brand new, minted that year penny. And I turn to him and I jokingly say, like, haha, look, it's an offering from the fairies. And his eyes get big and he raises his eyebrows and he's like, dude, man, that's freaky, man. I did not see that on the way out. And I'm like, yeah, I mean, like, I didn't see it as we were hiking out to the site either, but I'm not looking for pennies in the middle of the trail. And he's like, I don't know, man. I feel like I would have seen that thing. And I'm like, okay, if you say so. We walk onto the car. I don't really think too much of it. And as we go to get in the car, I'm like almost even halfway in the car, like half of my leg is in the car. He just goes, oh no. And if you're ever out in the woods and you hear someone say that, your stomach just drops. and so I'm like even hesitant to ask. I'm like, all right, what's wrong? He says, dude, I don't have the GPS. I'm like, what do you mean you don't have the GPS? Like, I saw it on you when we got back to the trail. You checked. I saw you checked. You had it then. And he's like, yeah, I did. I don't know what happened, but I don't have it now. And I'm like, okay, well, that means it has to be somewhere along the trail, right? If you saw it once we got back to the trail and you don't have it now at the car, that's the only place we've been. He's like, yeah. And it has like pink surveyor's tape tied to it, pink ribbon tied to it to make it very obvious to see. In case something like this would happen. And so we have no choice but to walk the mile back out to this burned area. And as we're walking back out to the burned area, we start to begin to notice that there's like a storm front moving in, like the wind starts to pick up. In these areas that got burned really bad, there's these massive like craggled trees, like snags that are charred and completely dead. And when the wind hits them just right, I'm not even joking, these trees whistled. So it was a very eerie scene to be out there at night. It's probably about, I don't know, 2 a.m. at this point, maybe 2:15 a.m. So the night has drug on, and we walk that whole mile back. We're scanning the trail, scanning the sides of the trail. We do not see that GPS whatsoever. We turn around at the very end point. On the way back out, I made a mental note of the penny. There it is. We walked past it. Neither of us touched it. We walked all the way back out. Didn't see the GPS whatsoever. Turned around and started to walk back towards the truck. At this point, it does start to rain on us, and it rains just enough that we're soaking wet. So we are absolutely miserable. We've lost more than one piece of equipment tonight. We cannot finish the night because all of our sites are on that GPS. So the night is done, and I'm secretly screaming inside. I'm like, thank God it's over. But we walk all the way back. No events whatsoever. We get back in the car, and we start to drive away. And I turn to him as we're heading back to our cabin in defeat. I say, hey, man, I really didn't want to say this when we were out on the trail because I don't want to freak us out too much, but did you see that penny on our second pass back to the car? And he like gets real quiet. He turns and says, no, man, I didn't. And I turn back to him and I say, yeah, you know what's funny? I didn't see that penny either. And this time I was looking for it. So that's my story. I guess it's the case of the tempting penny. And you can make of it what you will, but over the course of the rest of that summer, we saw multiple instances where pocket change was on the trail. One time, it was right next to a baby graveyard, a pioneer baby graveyard. And the very last transect I finished that summer, at the very end of my transect, there was a silver necklace hanging from a tree, almost like as a last attempt to try to get me to allure me in with a temptation, with an offering, if you will. Keep in mind, like thousands of people hike these trails every day. I think it's very easy for someone to accidentally drop change or a necklace or anything like that. But I was looking for that penny and I didn't see it. And I don't know what to say. But that's my story. I wish I could go on having a conversation with the guys. It was a lot of fun when I actually was on the podcast, and I had them with me. So hopefully we'll be able to recreate that sometime in the future. I even had a beer, but I drank all the beer, so no, I don't have a lager or just a beer in general to share. But yeah, anyways, I guess that's pretty much all I have. But thanks for having me on the podcast, gentlemen, and hope to be around in the future.
Yeah, and one of the stories that Parker told earlier was pretty much like that same deal about a penny and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's weird. Yeah, the other one, at least the guy was like, if this is mine,
Yeah.
leave it and I'll come back for it tomorrow. And he came back and it was still there. Yours, like, y'all left in 30 minutes, we're back and gone. Whew, that's
Now the
bad.
freaky part is like Kevin said, usually on the show we try and look for like the explanations of things and whatnot, right? There's certain things that we just don't know explanations for, and this is to me very much one of those. And at least like the concept like little people as a whole. Like yeah, sure, some animal could walk by and like knock some brush over the penny or something like that, but suspending that, the idea that like maybe these things are real, maybe there is something different, something crazy out there in the woods, and it was right there where you were just 10
It
minutes
was
prior.
next to you.
Yeah, it was in the exact same spot that you were. That's freaking
It was trying to
terrifying, dude.
bait you.
Yeah.
It was trying to bait you, man.
Yeah, it's sitting there behind that tree saying, "Get that effing penny, Kevin. Go for it. Just take it."
Oh my gosh. Mine, I don't know if it's little people, but it's just as scary because while you're talking about yours, I would think about mine, and it, like I said with the sleep paralysis stuff, like just instant chills and like my eyes start welling up. So I was camping in, it was like right along the west North Carolina border and Tennessee border. I can't remember why I was out there. I think I was down in southeast Kentucky, and I was like, screw it. I'm going to, over here. I'm going to go find somewhere. I wanted to be alone. So I went out in the woods, did this trail, went off and camped on the side of the trail a ways. Didn't have any goals in mind as far as like, backpacking this whole trail or want to stay out here and do this. I was just like, I'm in a mood. I want to be alone. I want to go think about life. So set up my camp and everything. And I'm sitting there and I've kind of got my fire in front of me and then tent a little bit ways out with like the entrance facing the fire. And I'm sitting there kind of at the foot, like the mat of my tent. I'm just kind of sitting there looking at the fire. And I start hearing like kind of little footsteps. And I was like, okay, there's, squirrels and stuff. I was like, that doesn't sound like a squirrel per se, because squirrels they'll kind of like stop, and like they're really light. But then I was like, okay, well maybe a deer. Well, if a deer's like, kind of around here, I expected to either like make a couple steps, then stop and get kind of spooked, then maybe a couple more steps. Or just like keep on solid walking by. It doesn't really care about me while it's, eating its forbs and everything. But these ones were heavier than a squirrel, but lighter than like a full-grown deer. And it sounded like with deer, it's like their legs neck down so much.
There's
you
a
can kind of tell
bipedal and quadrupedal footsteps. You can tell the difference.
Yeah, it sounded like plantigrade, like footstep falls.
I don't know what that means.
But like human feet, bare feet.
Plants don't have feet, Parker.
Jeez. So it sounded like that, and I heard like some kind of off on this side, some kind of off on this side, until it was kind of going around me. I couldn't tell how many were happening at once. If anybody's been in the woods at night, it gets dark. If you've been in somewhere that gets as much rainfall and vegetation as like the Appalachians does, it is dark, just crazy dark. And I think it was like moonless at night too. And I had a big fire sitting right there, so from like my eyes being adjusted to having the fire,
you can't see anything around
past
there.
it, I couldn't see jack.
Yeah.
And thankfully I didn't, but I was getting kind of spooked. And
but the freaky thing there though is that you can't see anything, but everything in that area can see you.
It sees, whatever it was, whatever these footsteps were. I was just trying to take them out of my head. I was like, okay, it's probably just some animal. Doesn't sound like any animal I know that'd be walking around my camp. And why would they be this close to a fire?
Yeah.
But they're walking around. So I was sitting on like the mat of my tent, and I kind of just like scooched myself just to where I was inside my tent, and I was sitting there, and I was like, I really don't like this. And then in my head, I hear, Parker. You know what the worst part is? It was in Zach's voice.
What do you mean?
It was in your voice.
Yeah.
It was in your voice.
Well, that's
And
cool.
I
One
was
of the
like,
stories we heard earlier said that it's able to imitate and whatnot.
yeah. I was like, and it's me, a fire, my tent, blackness.
Oh, I hate
And this
that,
is at
dude.
like probably 2:30 in the morning. And you hear your name called by you who was in Texas.
Yeah.
And it didn't sound like, it wasn't, you have your inner voice where it's like, oh, like your inner
Recalling something,
head
yeah.
voice. Yeah, I like felt the vibration in my ears.
Jeez, what?
Like I heard you saying Parker.
Yeah, well, I miss you too, brother.
And I froze.
Yeah, that's
And
terrifying.
I was keeping my eyes on the fire and just like almost near tears, and I just slowly backed myself up and like grabbed my hatchet and just like zipped up the tent and just like the entire night
Yeah, I was
till
about
I
to say,
saw
you can't sleep after that, right?
till I saw sunlight peeking through the frigging canopy. Just sat there and I heard footsteps for a little bit longer, but they probably went away after about another hour or so.
Jeez,
But
dude.
yeah, that was awful. Yeah, and I had been chasing bears like that whole summer. Like I know how it sounds when bears are walking through stuff. I've been sitting in the woods like taking pictures of mushrooms or something, and had deer just come in and start browsing around me.
Mhm.
3-4 feet away. I know what they sound like. I know what squirrels sound like, but it sounded like just smaller human steps. They're like deliberate, kind of just like creeping around.
Well,
And
also
then
when
I
it
heard
comes
that
to
voice.
when it comes to wild animals, the second they see you, like 9 times out of 10, they're out. Like if they know that you're in the area and whatnot, they won't even come close to you. So like the fact that
Yeah,
these things were
and-
still circling around as far as an hour afterwards and whatnot, especially with the fire
Yeah.
where it can very much see you.
Yeah, and animals typically don't go towards fire. They don't like to just hang out around it
Yeah.
because they don't have the concept of cultivated fire.
Yeah, they see fire, they're like, danger.
Yeah, it's really interesting too because like depending on where you're at, like right now my job is super multifaceted, and like I mean you can get like LE stories, you can have really weird animal encounters, you can have weird people encounters. Like it's just this whole grab bag of weird stuff that's going on.
Yeah.
I've been some places and there's tarot cards nailed to the backs of trees.
Huh.
Like not
wow.
facing the trail. And like, I'm crazy, so it's like, and one of them I found at Raven Run. So, I'd be working like way off in the woods because I worked there. I could go wherever I wanted to. Or I'd be camping and I'd be like, all right, well, I'm going to go way off trail this time and try and find a prettier spot to camp. And they wouldn't be facing the trail. They'd be like maybe 100 yards off trail and nailed to the backside. So like if somebody was doing it, they wouldn't be doing it to scare people because then they'd face the trail and
Yeah,
then someone
people would
looks
actually
over and is
see it.
like, whoa, there's a tarot card, spooky. Who's on the back? And I
That is
found
weird.
like, I think 2 or 3 of those.
Oh, yeah.
Every time I had that happen, I was like, nope. One time, whenever I found the one at Raven Run, I found that tarot card in the morning. Then we were cleaning out that old farmhouse that's from like the late 1800s, and there's a whole wall, like a bunch of the walls are torn up and stuff, and behind each wall, like they had newspaper, and in this dark stairwell, the whole thing wasn't torn up except one word, and it said Parker.
What?
I-
That's crazy.
And it was like probably a quarter an inch size print. And like the whole house had just big sections torn from it. The stairwell, the only portion that was torn off just said Parker. No coworker. Yeah, no coworker could have guessed and just torn off that little piece.
yeah.
And that was after I found that tarot card that morning, and I was like, I think it was like a life and death tarot card, and I was like, this is it, boys. This
Yeah,
is it for me.
I'm not going home. All right.
All right, Well, let's get into some possible explanations for the little people. So it's pretty hard to pin down. Like I said, I had COVID and my research brain was not there.
Yeah.
But it's also hard to pin down. What if I was like, yeah, this cryptid's real because I didn't want to research it. So what's weird about the little people is that almost every culture across the globe has something extremely similar. Like the Hawaiian Islands and Polynesian Islands, they also have little people, and most of the time they do benevolent stuff. There's Irish leprechauns. There's stuff over in Asia, Europe, Russia. They're friggin' everywhere. So pretty hard to pin down on like, okay, where did this come from if it's been in every civilization since Sumeria, you know? Pretty
Yeah.
weird.
But also, like, the
So,
idea of, like, a small person, like, that's not too much of a stretch for the human imagination.
yeah. So because it's pretty hard to pin down, I was just gonna turn this to a round table discussion. What do you guys think
Oh, yeah?
are some possibilities? Zach always likes to come up with his weird theories, so I figured I'd give it a go at it this
Yeah.
time.
Okay, well, this one's a little bit harder because, like, I always thought the little people stuff was going to be literally just, like, small people. I didn't realize it was going to be some sort of, like, they might have their own realm or, like, they can disappear, kidnap kids, all that stealing stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, I'll see if I can think of something. Come back to me. They'll come back to me. Okay, some of these topics we've covered, like you've seen the episodes, like the bunyip. We're pretty goddamn certain that's a seal. But some of these, I'm not necessarily saying for sure this monster's out there or like this weird phenomenon is something supernatural. We just don't necessarily know. And that's kind of the camp that I'm in for this right now. Like my immediate thought of like just pure skeptic would be like it's just a catch-all kind of like a thing that the Southern culture uses to say like, oh, I lost something, little people got it, you know, or just kind of like a general explanation that maybe the Cherokee used that back in the day, just like the boogeyman but of losing things. Yeah.
Prank boogeyman.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly, yeah. It's like the douchebag boogeyman.
Yeah.
He's not gonna hurt you, but he's gonna make you really, really sad.
It's gonna maybe offer you a knife and then go psych.
Yeah.
Just kidding, it was mine and I'm gonna move it over here now.
Yeah.
So let me throw a little wrench in here. Something weird that I found was that a lady named Mary Joyce wrote a book called The Cherokee Little People Were Real. It's about testimonies from men in the early to mid 1900s that while doing construction, mining, etc. in North Carolina, they found ancient, very small tunnels with like legit made archways and construction techniques. Also, they found like tiny skeletons, like little people sized, that had like adult bone ratios and teeth. And yeah, on YouTube, there's a video of Joyce giving a talk about her book. Pretty interesting if you guys want to check it out. I think you can just Google or YouTube Cherokee Little People Were Real, Mary Joyce, and it'll come up. But yeah, that kind of throws a wrench in it. They're finding like all these tunnels that like, you know, they're like little people sized, not aqueducts and stuff, you know, because like
See, now
why
that
would
was my
there be
immediate thought, is, like,
aqueducts
it
in
is
like
some sort of
Western?
infrastructure for something else.
Yeah, but why would they be like inside of a mountain in Western North Carolina?
I don't know, freaking mines.
You know, children and infants, their bones will be, you know, you can, if you get a skeleton, you can tell based off what the bones look like, whether it's male or female or child versus adult. But yeah, they said like it had all adult teeth as far as human standards go, and then like normal ratios for human adult bones, but they're just whoop.
So now, if this is one of those things. Like, if there's more sources on this, that'd be freaking crazy. Like, if there's something that could really help, like, confirm it as opposed to just this one. But also, I'm wondering if, like, so okay, it says tiny skeletons but had adult-seeming bones and teeth. I'm curious if that means, like, say the infill of the bones, like the actual I don't know what the term is, but like density, I guess the bone density is like that of an adult, but the bones themselves were smaller. Could that just be somebody with dwarfism or whatnot? Maybe like a family that was like, a family of little people, not Cherokee little people, but just like actual,
Well, but human dwarfism doesn't make you 2.5 foot tall. Or, like...
Oh, yeah, I didn't realize
Yeah.
how small it was. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, like people with dwarfism are,
Like
at
4 foot.
least, 4 or so. For the most part. Like,
I mean, then you
two
also
and a
get
half
your-
foot.
You get your Vern
2.5 foot is
Troyers,
tiny.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But, like,
I don't know how tall.
how many Vern
How
Vern Troyers are out there in Western North Carolina
Yeah.
making... I think
Vern
they did,
Troyer
like,
was
samples...
2'8", dude.
Wow.
Also, he was much older than I thought he was.
Yeah.
Wow. He was born in 1969, dude.
Yeah, Austin Powers came out like 20 years ago.
That's crazy.
Over
He
20
died in
years ago.
2018. Wow, that's awesome. Not that's awesome that he died. Awesome that he lived that long.
Zach and I were actually just talking about how I saw a thing that fidget spinners are a decade old.
Yeah,
I know, dude.
Somebody's like, hey, like someone's like, gun to your head. When did fidget spinners come out? I've been like 2 years ago, 3 years ago.
Yeah, last year.
Yeah,
Whenever somebody says last year, I always think like 2015.
me too. Yeah,
What was I gonna say? Yeah, I think they did like maybe some sampling on like the earth that was all carved out, and like where it was carved out was like really stinking old, and it pretty weird. They're like actual construction techniques, not just like a little, shoddily done carved in thing, but like actually using geometry and making the correct ratio to make an archway. Pretty weird. Check it out.
well, that's pretty cool. Is there like photos and whatnot too?
I believe so. I think there is.
Back to the Google. Mary Joyce, a new book.
Oh.
Yeah, Little People too, even littler.
Even Little People too, Electric Boogaloo.
Yeah.
Mountaintop drumming ritual.
Well, all the pictures I'm seeing are very much like normal tunnels, like straight up access tunnels for like roads or whatnot.
Well, we're going to leave this one up to y'all on whether little people are real or not. Whether they're real or not, or whether or not we can come up with an explanation. It's a fun legend, and it's been around in many cultures for a long, long time. So, Zach, what have you got for us next week?
So next week we're doing one that I've been really excited about ever since we started doing the podcast. It's the cryptids of World War I. So it's just kind of it's two stories in particular. It's talking about hellhounds or the hounds of Mons. It's a really cool story, and we'll be covering that next week. It's not that long of a story, so I'm also pairing it with the U-28 monster. It's another World War II one. World War I. That's like I believe it's a German. Yeah, I think if I recall right, it was a German boat out at sea encountered a creature, and there's like a whole account for it. It's great. So yeah, we're just gonna be talking about some World War II stuff in honor of Armistice Day. If we time things out right, that one should be airing. Yep, right around. I think 11/11 is a Saturday, so it's gonna be a couple days after this year. But yeah, and in time to celebrate World War I, or honor, I should say. Yeah, so that's what we're gonna be talking about next week. Just general couple of World War I cryptid stories, and yeah, I think that's about all we've got for today. You guys have anything else? Any closing thoughts?
All right, well, thank you, everybody, for watching. Hope you guys had a good time. If you like the show, be sure to like, comment, give us a 5-star review, and we'll send you a drawing. It's true. Kevin can attest. Yeah, we'll send you a drawing. Thank you guys very much for watching. You can get in touch with us by commenting or sending us an email at legends.
It's been 18 episodes.
At legends.
Legends
Loggers.
at Wohlstein.media.
Okay, that's what I was...
Yeah, Legends at
Maybe
Wohlstein Media.
get.
It's in the description. Or you can also follow us at Legends and Loggers on pretty much any major social media platform.
That's all we have, folks. I've said thank you for watching a million times. Anyway, stay wild.
Yep. Live life legendary.